Hello, this is Gabe Sukenik with the Mainstream Alternative News Outside the Box. And for today's News Outside the Box, we have an interview with author Thomas Woods, the author of Nullification, How to Resist Federal Tyranny in the 21st Century. The book, which just released today, is currently number 488 on Amazon's top bestsellers list. Thomas Woods was recently invited along with Dr. Paul to speak at the Iowa State GOP convention, where the topic was a celebration of our Constitution. And Thomas Woods spoke with us behind the scenes about his talk about nullification in regards to the Constitution and where he believes the states' rights fight is going to continue.
I am shocked to see Tom Woods speaking at the Iowa GOP state conventions. How did you feel going into it? How did you feel coming out of it? What was your responses from the delegates?
Okay. All right. Well, it's always good to start off with a nice softball question right over the plate. That's good. Well, you know, my view is anybody who invites me within reason, I'm glad to go speak to and talk about whatever they want me to talk about. But I thought to myself, see, I know there are people who in a situation like this, they would have shown up with a belligerent speech castigating everyone in the room. And that's not my style. My style is, I think to myself, I used to be exactly like most of the people in that room. You know, basically, I think a lot of them have their hearts in the right place, but wait, are we working okay?
Oh yeah.
Okay. But very conventional in their thinking. You know that if we just elect the right person in 2010 or 12, then things will turn around. You know, I mean, I'm only 37 and I'm already past that naivete. I like this. How can you think? How many times do we have to go through this charade? But I don't want to get up there and say, "What's the matter with you people? Don't you understand the whole thing's a scam?" And no. I want to meet people where they are and find common ground, and then sort of lead them in ways that will be appealing to them, with arguments that will resonate with them, closer to where I stand now, which is that I think you know, both of the major parties are responsible, as I said last night, for the situation that we're in, and so relying just on some savior politician is just not realistic. So we have to do something different. So anyway, so I went into it sort of figuring that I'd get a polite response, and you know, then they'd go on to Ron Paul, and people would have their cake and go home, and that'd be the end of it. I guess there were enough Campaign for Liberty or Ron Paul people in the room, though, that I could not understand the response when I was introduced. Wasn't that insane? Nobody knows who I am. Like, what is going on here? What I think happened was that there was a significant minority of sort of our people who stood up, that the rest of the people sort of felt compelled to, oh, sure, I know who this guy is, of course. You know, there we go. I'm glad he's here. But, and so, you know, I was friendly. I talked about things where we have common ground in the Constitution and all the ways they ignore it or they distort it, whatever. But then by the end, I was saying things that are really quite radical. I mean, really that, you know, we're going to have to, in the states, take matters into our own hands. We've got to just defy these people. To heck with this whole thing. We've got to just say, no, we're just not doing it anymore. And I just thought, you know, I'm going to say these things and just let the chips fall where they may. And they react hysterically with cheers and applause at the end. This is unbelievable. Now, at the same time, they're probably going to cheer wildly for Rick Santorum. You know, I figured the next day. You know, you can't win them all. But that impressed me. I thought to myself, even though the media that I'm going to get for this book is going to be much less than for what I've gotten for previous books, the fact that this crowd, very conventional, party-oriented crowd, would respond to that kind of speech in that way gave me hope that maybe the unthinkable is going to become almost mainstream one of these days. So that was my thinking.
Yeah, there are certainly some candidates who are echoing a lot of similar thoughts. You just came out with your new book, Nullification. So I was very interested to hear the Attorney General get up there and saying she's all for suing the federal government.
Yeah, which is a great start. And I hope, and I'm sure she would be a much better, you know, Attorney General than you folks have here now, from what I understand. I'm afraid, and I'm not speaking about her specifically, but with regard to pushing this sort of thing, you know, nullification and state resistance beyond just filing lawsuits, is that unfortunately people coming out of law schools are the hardest to reach on this subject. They are the hardest because this is the opposite of what they learned in law school. In law school, they don't learn American history. They, by and large, do not learn the Constitution. They learn a lot of cases. So they learn a lot of John Marshall decisions, most of which are horrific. But this is what's drummed into their heads. Federal supremacy, that's what they learn. They think that's what the Constitution is. So you tell them this, and they sort of feel like, now, wait a minute. This is some kind of seditious craziness. I mean, we can't have this. But, I mean, the evidence for it is just overwhelming. But unfortunately, their minds have been formed in a paradigm that is just a universe removed from this. So that's an unfortunate thing. Law students are not exposed to this. So it kind of reminds me of what Thomas Jefferson said about the newspapers in his day, which were just, gossipy rags. He said you would be better educated about the affairs of the day if you read no newspaper than if you read any of these. And sort of likewise, I think you would be likely to have a sounder understanding of the Constitution if you had no legal education, if you hadn't actually gone to a law school. I have a friend who has, Kevin Gutzman is a co-author of mine on a book called Who Killed the Constitution. Kevin has a PhD in history, but he also has a law degree, and he says, we cannot confuse a law degree with an education. A law degree, you learn a lot of cases, and that's very important to know all this case law. But what if the case law is wrong? You don't have a benchmark against which to judge it based on your legal education. But anyway, that was a digression, but I couldn't resist adding it in there.